beginning of life itself. Sometimes viruses help human evolution.
According to another study, one important human adaptation that resulted from a virus is a special layer of the human placenta that prevents a fetus from being rejected by the mother's body. The genes that create this tissue are called syncytins, and they were not originally found in human ancestors.
They were acquired at a couple different points in our history, about 25 and 40 million years ago. And they're important for the connection between the mother and the fetus.
Some scientists now believe that viral genes like this were as important for human evolution as natural selection.
I think that horizontal gene transfer being carried out by viruses or objects was probably the primary mechanism whereby changes in species and major changes within a species occur.
Was it by pure chance that viruses helped to create a species as sophisticated as humans? Or might this viral evolution have been intelligently directed by beings from outer space?
Anthropologists are telling us that humans evolved over time out of Africa, and that we had certain genetic leaps where we were suddenly smarter, our communication skills became greater. And so these genetic leaps throughout evolutionary history might have just been a natural thing. They could have been engineered as well.
There is no doubt in my mind that viruses that have originated from space somehow had to do with our development here on Earth. However, it is very clear that the ancient astronaut theory proposes that the one reason why we became humans as we are today is not due to an accident by some natural virus from outer space, but a deliberate artificial change of our DNA. Could humans be the subject of a bioengineering project? Use viruses from space to alter our evolution. And if so, could those viruses have been delivered to Earth in comets? Ancient astronaut theorists point to a curious event in our evolutionary history, the moment humans almost went extinct.
Around 75,000 years ago, there was a bottleneck in human evolution. It suggested that the human population actually went down from millions down to just a few thousand. This is certainly something that genetics backs up. And we have to ask ourselves what was going on at this time.
Originally, geologists believe that bottleneck of humanity was caused by the supervolcano in Sumatra exploding. Now, recent finds had indicated that's not the case, and are leaning more towards a virus, a plague that was genetically programmed for early humans, wiped them out.
One controversial theory is that the cause of this bottleneck event was not just a virus, but a virus that was brought to Earth on a comet. According to this theory, a comet slammed into the planet with such devastating force that it created a nuclear winter, killing almost all human life on Earth. Almost, because those that could survive both the nuclear winter and the alien virus emerged as a profoundly altered and improved species. It was immediately following this event that humans first began to leave evidence of symbolic thinking, art, music, and advanced language.
Somehow human beings reached another stage of evolution. It was the transformation of the human brain. Could it be, and we believe it did happen, that alien viruses infected planet Earth at this inflection point of the extinction of the human species? They
same influenza epidemic ravages populations across India. Its starting point is traced back to the city of Bombay, and there's a strange connection between these two outbreaks. They begin on the same day.
One of the things that's not often discussed is that the Great Flu epidemic began on the same day in two different places, in Boston and on the other side of the world in Bombay. Now those are two spots on the earth that are virtually on opposite ends, and you have to wonder how that is possible, because you can't travel within a day by ship from Boston to India, and air travel at the time didn't exist.
How does an outbreak occur of the same virus on places so spread apart in 1918 in less than 24 hours? The answer is that the virus probably fell from space.
Perhaps the Earth was grazed by the tail of a comet. And so that's why we had the outbreak of the epidemic on two sides of the planet.
Until recently, it was believed that radiation, extreme temperatures, and the vacuum of space, that is to say, the absence of any oxygen, would kill any life form. But ever since humans first ventured into space, scientists have been finding evidence to the contrary. April 20th, 1967. NASA's unmanned Surveyor 3 lander touches down on the moon and begins its mission collecting soil from the lunar surface. 2 years later, astronauts on the Apollo 12 mission recover parts of Surveyor 3 and return them to Earth. To the astonishment of scientists, living strep bacteria is found on the probe. But this is only the first of many cases of microorganisms surviving space travel.
There have been experiments in which microorganisms have been flown to the International Space Station and exposed to the hard vacuum and the radiation and the temperature changes of deep space. And many of those organisms survived.
Incredibly, several types of bacteria have thrived back on Earth after spending up to 2 years outside the International Space Station. But even more surprisingly, this durability isn't reserved for single-celled organisms alone. In September 2007, a Russian Soyuz rocket carried tiny animals called tardigrades into space to test their legendary ability to thrive in extreme environments.
Tardigrades are called water bears. They're found in the polar regions on mosses and so forth. And they're beautiful little animals. They have a very unusual life history. And there were experiments in which tardigrades were carried to the International Space Station, and they were found to survive exposure to the deep space environment. And after they were brought back, there were several of the tardigrades that were still alive.
Now, in the last 20 years, it was shown beyond any doubt that microbes are essentially born space travelers. They can survive almost any of the rigors that you can think of that would greet them in space. High temperatures, high radiation, intense cooling, and even intense heating.
It's also well established that microorganisms can very easily survive in bodies like comets and could well live in bodies like Europa and Enceladus because there is ice there, there is liquid water oceans underneath the icy crust.
In recent years, astronomers are identifying more and more planets that could potentially harbor life. Some believe that microbial life first evolved on one of these distant planets. Eons later, meteor impacts blasted some of them into space, where they took root in comets. But even if true, how could they descend to Earth and infect humans?
and it could well be bringing with it dead and possibly even living microorganisms as it enters the Earth's atmosphere and then lands in oceans or lakes or streams of the planet.
Could this explain many of the plagues that sickened and killed millions throughout history? In 2007, an international team of researchers set up a research facility in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Spain to collect data on microbes falling to Earth from the sky.